Let's have another song, guys. What do you got?
Let's feature our new bass player, Mr. Derek Spivey, on this one. The Root Hog or Die.
All right. You guys ready?
Yep.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, go. Now look here, honey, you gotta spend some money, so you don't think it's funny about Root Hog or Die. Well, if you don't, I'm leaving. Said I'm not make-believing. Well, soon you'll be grieving about Root Hog or Die. Well, I bought my watch and my clothes and diamond ring. Now you have to stop, shake, shake that old thing. Think I'm mellow. Well, I've been a good fellow. Well, I'm no storyteller about Root Hog or Die. Andrew Fletcher. Help him out, Crickle. Mr. Gary. Blow, man. Here, honey, you gotta spend some money, so you don't think it's funny about Root Hog or Die. Well, if you don't, I'm leaving. Said I'm not make-believing. Said soon you'll be grieving about Root Hog or Die. Well, I bought my watch and my clothes and diamond ring. Now you have to stop, shake it, shake it, that old thing. You think I'm mellow. Well, I've been a good fellow. I'm no storyteller about Root Hog or Die. Party!
And there you have it. Another live one from Firecracker Jazz Band on WNCW. Root Hog or Die. Now, wondering about the origins of that term and the origins of that song. What can you tell us about that?
I picked that one up from the Harlem Hamfats, which is a really great band they were big around the late 30s, and they were a backing band for a lot of big artists. They were based out of Chicago, even though it was Harlem Hamfats. But some of the guys from Harlem, some of the guys were from the South, and they were a produced band in Chicago, and they backed up Louis Armstrong, several other people popular at the time. But they were a great backing band, and then they had original tunes, that being one that's where I found it from. It's really, really awesome tune, and yeah, we do it kind of close to the original, but that's where the spirit of the song comes from.
Yeah, a lot of nuance in between the various scenes, Chicago versus New York versus New Orleans.
Sure. And this was even a culmination of a lot of those sounds with these guys. They're, just very versatile, great band of their time, for sure.
And the message of the song, too, is root hog or die. It just basically means hustle. If you want supper, you got to hustle for it. And so, obviously something that brings together musicians over the decades,
The more things change, the more they stay the same, right? Yeah. Talking about the style of music that you play, traditional jazz, at times referred to as Dixieland jazz, and the endurance of this form of music. I wonder about some of the figures that you might point to as being pivotal or important to you as artists in the style that you play.
Well, I mean, one of my guiding lights as far as music goes is Jelly Roll Morton. I'm a huge fan of Jelly Roll Morton, and I've never tried to emulate him exactly. My model has always been I want to be the type of piano player that Jelly Roll Morton might be hearing and would stop and say, "Hey, that guy's pretty good." I don't want to be Jelly Roll Morton. I want to impress him, and I think that allows me to be myself, but also keep my feet in the source of the music that I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, I would just also add in there. I mean, this music is traditionally and was created by the African American experience, and so none of us are African American, but I always want to just like have that in my mind, and that we're paying tribute, and we try to give back if we can to the communities, and that's just where we're at. Yeah.
Another thing you have to remember that at the time it was not traditional jazz. It was it was the rock and roll of its day.
Yeah.
And so that spirit is, if you can channel it and bring it through. My goal is to take you back in time, to help you time travel, one song at a time.
And I also think that all good music came from the mixtures of two other musics and the mixtures of two other cultures when unlike things meet and create a new thing. And sometimes that process is hard and difficult, and from as we know from history and the experiences of the people who made this music. So that's why I don't always worry too much about purity. I'm happy to bring in some other elements and to the music and not really do note for note stuff very often. But to try to keep it live in the moment, like we are real people that have heard real music in the decades made since then, but always keeping 1 foot in the 20s.
Yeah, it's evolving all the time.
Yeah.
And I grew up towards the end of the big band era and the crossover between the Dixieland big band and bebop. So I tended towards the bebop, but I think my favorite trombone player who was a crossover was Jack Teagarden.
Yeah.
Yeah, a great for sure, a great among greats.
Yeah, and it's cool. I mean, Earl definitely he has seen jazz evolve. You're fortunate to have had that experience, and we all kind of look up to you and learn from your experience.
Agreed.
Thank you for that.
Well, if that's true, you must show me more respect.
Well, I didn't say we're going to take it that far.
We're much nicer to you when your wife is around. You should bring Rhonda. Bring Rhonda more often to the shows.
Well, speaking of respect, it's amazing to watch the origins of jazz being sort of this backroom sort of phenomenon at anywhere but Lincoln Center, and how it's evolved and progressed over the decades.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a big fan of the gatekeeping that happens at some of the major institutions. I think that what's happening on the ground floor is always going to be more interesting, and that's kind of where it really lives.
Firecracker Jazz Band live in Studio B. You have shows tomorrow, like we mentioned at the Double Crown, also coming up in just a little bit at the Crow and Quill in Asheville. That is June 8th.
Yep.
And on June 11th, the Big Secret Family Fest. I think we're going to talk about that in just a little bit